and welcome to the Business of Property podcast. I'm Stuart.
And I'm Simon.
And we're both property people running our own businesses. And this podcast is just us chatting, as we do every Wednesday, about anything and everything property. And before we do get into today's episode, just a reminder that if you do want to get in touch with us, both Simon and I are active in our Twitter account at Biz of Property, at BIZ of Property. So you can communicate with either of us there and just message your good wishes if you like. Also, you can contact us via thebusinessofproperty.com. So if you would like to reach out, please use those channels. And if you haven't yet left a review, please do so. It really does help us. On to today's business. And as you might expect, doing what we do, sometimes the topic of estate agents and letting agents pops up. Before I get into that, Simon, this is something that's very much front of mind for you. So would you like to share with us what's on your mind?
Yeah, we don't have anything else to talk about today, do we? So I am, as I think we've discussed before, currently looking for a new investment property. And this is something I've been doing sort of from a desktop for a while and not really finding things that I'm overly convinced about or overly keen on. And even ones that I have, they've been going really quickly. And I've been very busy with lots of other things, so haven't got around to doing anything about them. Just recently, there seem to be a few more interesting properties coming on, a few being reduced, a few falling through, and they are on the market slightly longer. So I have actually started getting myself sorted out and getting in touch with agents to make some viewings. And indeed, as of recording, I have a number of viewings now booked, assuming the properties don't sell before I get there. And I thought it might be quite interesting to chat about some of the differences in experience that the agents are offering. So in the last few days, I've been in touch with a couple of local agents, and I have also booked a viewing through Strike, which is one of the sort of challenger agents that's primarily online, and also Purple Bricks, which I don't think we can really call a challenger agent anymore because it's been around for too long. But it is similarly a sort of primarily online agent. So yeah, perhaps we can talk about those. Where do you think we should start, Stuart?
Well, I'd like to start with Strike because it's a new company to me. It's the first I'm hearing of this. So maybe if you could just share a little bit more with us about what it is and, you know, how different stroke similar it is to something like a Purple Bricks.
So I must confess I don't know very much in the way of details. I can tell you that they are quite new and that they seem to have adverts around the place saying that they will sell your property for free. So I haven't looked into this from a selling point of view because that's not what I've been looking at. But certainly the adverts seem to suggest that they don't charge anything. Instead, I think they have some add-ons that they charge for if you want sort of extra bits. I don't know for sure if this is the case, but I think perhaps it might be around sort of doing viewings and things like that for you. They also try to make money through upsells, so sort of arranging a mortgage and that kind of thing.
Mm.
So I have no idea if they'll still be here in a year's time, but never mind.
I would just read a line from their website. We've waved goodbye to pointlessly high fees. We make money through optional extras along the way, but you never have to use them.
Yeah, indeed. So I found a property that was for sale through Strike on Rightmove, and there's a phone number listed. So I called them up, and it went through to, I assume, a call centre. Actually, perhaps before I carry on with this story, I'll give a tiny bit of background on the property I was looking at. This was a property that was actually listed last year, and I spotted it and thought, interesting, and particularly interesting because it was being sold with a tenant in situ, and they weren't suggesting they would get rid of the tenant. They were actually trying, the listing said they were selling it tenanted. So I thought that was particularly interesting, but it sold. And now, some months later, it's fallen through and it's back on the market. Now, the listing this time around has actually changed a little bit, and it no longer mentions a tenant. So I was thinking, okay, maybe the tenant's left. Maybe they did get rid of the tenant for the previous sale, which has now fallen through. But those were sort of some of the top things I wanted to ask about. So I phoned up the agent, Strike, went through to their call centre. It took a few tries for them to actually find the property that I was talking about. So if you've ever used OpenRent for letting a property, all of their property listings on Rightmove and things have sort of a unique number in them. And if you phone them up to try and book a viewing or whatever, they will ask you for this number in the advert. The Strike advert on Rightmove did not have a unique number. So we were going through sort of, they were asking me the postcode of the property. I was like, well, I don't actually know because I can only see the first few digits on Rightmove. Then they were trying to pick it up from sort of the rest of the address, and then they couldn't find it. And we went around this cycle a few times. They did eventually find it. So not the best of starts, but once they found the property, I thought, okay, great. They said, yep, it is definitely still available, and asked if I'd like to know anything about it. Yes, I would. I've got these questions. Is it tenanted? I don't know. Let me look through the notes. And several minutes later, their conclusion was they don't know. so again, not brilliant progress here. So they said the only way they thought they could probably find out would be to refer it to the local agent who was handling it, the local Strike agent or Strike guide, or I can't remember quite how they referred to them, but anyway, the person in the local area. And they said they could either send them a message and they'd probably be able to get back to me in a couple of days, or they could book a viewing and I could just ask them on the viewing. So I thought, okay, fine, let's just book a viewing. So that's what I did. And it had to be a few days out. They couldn't do it for a little while. Their agent or whatever processes were booked up. But that's fine. It was fairly straightforward. I picked a few potential dates and times, and they said they'd come back to confirm one of them. So yeah, all okay. As with all sales agents, when you book in, they'll ask you your name and your contact details and your sort of basic situation. But something I haven't had before is a sort of mini sales pitch for a mortgage, which I did get from Strike. So that was a little bit different. I sort of reiterated a couple of times that, no, I'm fine. I've got a mortgage broker. I'm quite happy sticking with them. Thank you very much. They went on and said, yes, but okay, you can get a quote from ours, so it's completely without obligation. So please do that if you'd like to. No, I wouldn't like to. Thank you. But yeah, so apart from that mini mortgage sales pitch and one or two issues with details around the property, it wasn't too painful a process. The phone call was over relatively quickly. I put forward a couple of options for where I like or when I'd like the viewings, and they text me back a few minutes later, actually maybe 20 minutes later, to confirm one of those times, and that's all set up. So yeah, not too bad, but.
And have they followed up with you post viewing?
Oh well, as we currently record, we haven't had the viewing, so
right.
I will have to let you know in the future when we get a chance to talk about this again.
Yeah, because obviously it's a two-way service, and we all want to save money. That's clear, and I think offering things for free is wonderful. But given that we have challenges with estate agents and letting agents when they're earning money, obviously the first concern is, well, if they're not. So you were looking to buy. I'm just trying to think. So yeah, so I guess if their business model is predicated on what they call the optional extras, that's always a slight concern from a business perspective, because if it's optional, it means I don't have to take it. So I worry about your business. But it also reminds me, and I haven't seen so much of it before, but I remember booking something during lockdowns, and we kind of talked about this before, but it was where agents were saying that you couldn't view a property, let alone put an offer on it, unless you'd spoken with their mortgage advisor. So things like that, which are for you as a buyer, it sounds like, you just dealt with it. It's one of those things you just say no 3 times and it's over. But actually, these are all things that kind of make the process a little bit harder than they should be sometimes.
Yep, indeed. However, I'm not sure that was the worst of the experiences I've got.
Mm.
So where should we go next? Should we look at local agents or purple bricks?
Well, obviously, I want to go to worst, but what's
You don't know which that is, so you're going to have to take a pick.
purple bricks?
Okay, so purple bricks. Again, property listing online, fairly straightforward. I can't actually remember whether this one had fallen through or anything interesting like that, but anyway, listing online. One looked interesting to me. Wanted to go and have a viewing. There's no particular questions or tenants in situ or whatever for this one, so more straightforward. Again, from Rightmove, phone number on the advert, phone them up and get a little recorded message saying, if you're calling for a viewing or a few other things, it says you can do all of these things on our website and please go there. And that was it. They didn't hang up, but then there was just silence after that, after this recorded message. And I hung on for sort of 30 seconds to see if there was something else or an option to speak to someone. But seemingly just nothing. So I thought, okay, you seem to be keen on me going to your website. I'm a technology person. I'm happy to do that. So I hung up the phone call, went back to the advert. I couldn't see an obvious link to their website, which some agents do include, but some apparently don't. And I'm not quite sure how Rightmove feel about that, linking out to the agent site. But anyway, couldn't find an obvious link. So go to Purple Bricks, search for the property again, find the property I'm interested in. And yep, sure enough, there's a button there that says book a viewing. You get to pick a date and a time slot that you like. They seem to know in advance of which time slots can and can't be done for their local agent and or the vendor. I don't know quite how they work that out, but on each day, some slots were available and some weren't. So went through there, picked something that worked for me. And then there's the obligatory sort of questions for what's your name, what's your contact details, and what's your situation, as in, are you looking for something to sell, or sorry, do you have something to sell, or are you looking for investment, or whatever else? And that was all fairly straightforward. The website appeared to be designed with only mobile phones in mind, though, because I've got quite a nice, fairly large 4K monitor that I sit at for doing my work, and this sort of booking process was in a tiny little box in the middle of the screen. So it could be better from that point of view, but generally speaking, worked very smoothly. Put in the details, and a little while after that, I think they emailed rather than texted. But anyway, they responded and confirmed the booking. And again, the booking is still in the future as we record, so I don't know how the viewing itself will go, but the booking process, I think, apart from the slightly odd phone call thing, was pretty good and pretty smooth with Purple Bricks.
Okay, so it sounds like we know where the worst experience is going to come from. But my only comment on this is, as someone that used to work in marketing, and particularly when we're thinking about, selling things, the more obstacles you put in the way, the less likely you are to get a sale. Now, of course, with property, it's a little bit different because particularly if you're buying for yourself, you see a house, you'll probably, forgive the pun of, you'll run through a couple of brick walls to get to see the property you want. However, if you put too many things in play, you'll get to a stage where you just go, I can't, if you redirect people different directions, or if it gets tricky. So like sometimes I just want to pick up the phone and just say, just tell me when I can view this property, rather than, I know technology is supposed to make things easy, and picking a date and a slot seems fairly easy, but sometimes it feels like there's more of a disconnect than you'd like when all you need to do is view a property. But we're more intrigued to understand the bad experience. So this, it sounds like it's going to come from the estate agent. Yeah,
the one you might have thought would be the saviour of the stories. I'm not convinced it is. So there are two agents I've been in touch with, or tried to be in touch with. One of them I'll give a bit of a pass on because I've only tried calling them once and they were engaged. So, okay, I haven't had a chance to retry with them. I will do. Hopefully that'll be an improvement. But the other one, I started trying to contact them a few days ago. And initially, again, starting from a Rightmove listing, phone number there, phone up, and they were also engaged. Okay, fine, fair enough. Busy. A few minutes later, phone up again. Okay, now it rings. and then goes to an answer phone message saying, please leave your details and we'll get back to you. So, okay, again, reasonable, but I didn't really want to just leave a message there, because at that point I knew I wasn't going to be available to be answering the phone soon after, so I didn't want to call back straight away. So I tried again later, again, answer phone rather than a person answering. But at that point, I'd also found their website and looked on there to see if they had any sort of options for trying to book or anything on there. And they didn't, but they did have the option to leave a message there. So I opted for that instead. So I said, okay, fill in my details so I can make sure the phone number and email address and whatever else is actually typed correctly rather than trying to leave it in a voicemail. And said, this is the property I'm interested in. Can you please give me a call back to try and book a viewing? And they didn't. That was, I think, 2 days before I tried again. And I'd heard nothing at all from them. So I thought, okay, fine. This property is still listed on Rightmove, so hopefully it's still hanging around. Let me try again. This is not the perfect property necessarily for me to be investing in, but it is in an area that I'm quite keen on. It's an area I know well. It's an area that I think would work well for an investment property, and it was the right sort of size and shape for the sort of investment properties I'm looking for. So I was fairly keen on this property. So phone up again. Yay, somebody answered. And I said, I'm interested in viewing this property. Said to me where it was. Their local agent, they know their properties. And they said, yes, I know that one. We've sold it. Oh, that's a shame. Okay, it's still on Rightmove. Said, yeah, but we have sold it. Are you potentially interested in looking at other properties? I said, yes, definitely would be. And he said, great, I'll give you a call back tomorrow, and we'll go through getting sort of set up on the system. He said, I'm about to head out for a viewing at the moment, so I can't do it right now. So I said, okay, that's great. Please do give me a shout back. And the following day, I heard nothing. And we're now actually the day after that as recording, and I've still heard nothing back from them. So they're obviously not too fussed about chasing buyers, which is kind of what we'd expect in this market. But it's still a little bit frustrating. And also, as of this morning, they have finally removed the property from Rightmove. So they're also a bit delayed with that as well. But they did eventually get there. So my experience with the local sales agent is a bit sort of not great. It was difficult to get started. Then they didn't have the property anymore, and they hadn't updated it. And then, having said they would get back to me, so I've left them a message via their website, and also now via talking to somebody. They still haven't got back to me. So I'm not really sure where to go with that. How are you finding agents when you talk to them? Can you actually get through to people?
Well, the funny thing is, I hadn't even thought about this until you started talking about this particular, this particular experience. And very recently, I've had the same experience, and I'm pretty sure people listening are saying, "Yep, been there." I found 3 properties actually that I liked, all with the same agent. One of them I really liked, and as even of today, I've called them today. I started calling them 3 weeks ago. The number still exists. The number rings. The properties are still online with Rightmove. And the first time I phoned, I left a voicemail message. And I phoned several times since. It's never not gone through to a voicemail, and no one's ever returned a call. The only thing I can assume is that the company no longer exists, and they just haven't dealt with what's left on Rightmove. But I do know, that one of the people that works there, I don't understand it, because, I was particularly interested in a property that I would have, very keen to put an offer on, but it gets to a stage where you just can't deal with it. I'm dealing with a couple of commercial agents now, and I have to say, the professionalism is better, much better. They do things like returning your phone calls within a short period of time. And one I was really impressed with, we walked around a property, and he knew the history of the property because he'd sold the property to the current owner something like 15 years ago. But it was really refreshing to walk around a property with an agent who gave you history, background, opinions on the current build, the current condition of an air conditioning unit. Do you know what I mean? Like all of those questions that you asked that were getting answered. In terms of general agents, I think my experience of So we're selling one of our properties, a studio flat that's fallen through a couple of times. We had another offer back in January that we accepted on the proviso that everything was expedited, because we had done the legals at least once for the sale. So we kind of, as far as our solicitors concerned, he's done. It's really just about an exchange of contracts and a deed of variation, which I won't go into. So as we said, look, we will accept this offer, but things need to move quickly. It's almost, well, it is 3 months since that agreement. And yeah, in terms of the detail, don't need to give too much away, but the buyer still doesn't have an offer on the table, and it's 3 months. So I kind of had to just put one of these emails together, which said, look, if we don't get an email with specific milestones of what's happening when within the next week, we are, although we wouldn't want to, we will just cancel the sale, because we're kind of done with it now. And although we've kind of rented the property on Airbnb, we've reached our limit on that of 90 days. So I'm saying to them, well, I've now got a property that's just sat empty, which I know rents and rents well, all because, and again, I appreciate banks are slow. I know there's lots of things, but just bringing this back to your point about the agent has never once proactively messaged us about what's happening. It's always us messaging or emailing saying, oh, and of course you can't speak to them directly. I don't think they're too busy and important to speak with people directly anymore. But I guess we're just old school. So, my wife will call them and then she'll get a WhatsApp message, so there'll never be a conversation. But unless we email and say what is happening, we don't hear anything. And so, when we're a bit busy, 2 or 3 weeks have gone by and we realize, oh, nothing's happened. So we message them, so I have to say, unfortunately, the standards that we are experiencing with residential agents is still not great. Hearing your experience and just having a look at Strike, and from what I've heard about Purple Bricks and my own experience of Purple Bricks, is there are businesses out there which want to be the game changers, but they're still not, as far as I'm concerned, meeting that first responsibility of customer service.
Yeah. Just on your buyer having troubles with their mortgage, one of the things I see through the data that Patma collects is properties falling through. And quite a lot of the falling through properties I'm seeing at the moment were sold last year. So we're looking at sort of 5-6 months for a property to fall through. So it does seem that the purchases are taking a long time. I don't mean to suggest that your sale will fall through, Stuart. I hope it doesn't. But I think getting to that conclusion, perhaps after 3 months, might actually be quite quick in the current world, because it does seem to last longer than that, or often last longer than that, before things are eventually concluded that they fail, or perhaps even work. On agents and the comparison to commercial agents, I wonder if it is because the commercial agents are perhaps not quite so busy and residential agents are super busy at the moment. Do you think it is just a business, and perhaps we should cut them some slack because the market's so crazy at the moment and they're just struggling to get back to everyone?
I always accept that, and I also accept that there may be calls that I've not returned expediently or at all sometimes, because when you get busy, things move on. But it happens so frequently that I just think it's not coincidence. And also, it's part of the job, whether you like it or not, is we appreciate the difficulty that you're dealing with both a seller and a buyer, and that's quite a complicated set of relationships to manage. So I do appreciate that there is a lot to deal with, but equally I think that's the business. It's customer, and you're dealing with high value items, and that's always my thought of it. If we're selling a property for say 250,000, okay, that's significant to us. But if you're only going to make 1%, 1.5%, or 1.25% on that, it's not high priority. As far as we're concerned, it should, because my view is that the quicker you bring that sale about, and surely that should be the business practice, is you bring that sale, because if it is only 2 to 3k, you want to get that turnover happening quickly, don't you? You need to bring that sale through. So surely part of your operation is the chasing and making that happen. And that's my concern. When I don't see that happening as a seller, But, we've both seen, experiences as well where, like we've both had, where it's been difficult for us, and in my case, impossible to get a viewing on a property. And I immediately put myself in the seller's shoes. They won't be necessarily be aware of it, but if I'm one, there could be several, tens of people that just want a viewing that haven't been able to get one. And it might not be a priority for the agent, but again, that's your job. So it's still frustrating.
To try and feel some sympathy for agents, I was speaking to a letting agent on this occasion recently. I was talking to them about the use of PATMA, and they were saying that in the last, I can't remember what it was, year, maybe, something in that recent time anyway, they've had their lettings book, so the number of properties they've got on from landlords, reduced by about 10%. They were saying that this is entirely from landlords selling up. So the market's hot. When properties come empty, the landlords are saying, well, actually, I think it's time to cash in. And they're selling up. So they've got fewer properties on their books. And this is presumably a sort of wider issue in their area as well. Because then when they do get a rental property that comes up, they put out the advert and they get over 100 inquiries for every advert they put out. And he said they just can't answer the phones fast enough because they've just got such a ridiculous number of people chasing each individual property that gets advertised. So, I mean, but when you're in that sort of a crazy situation, your revenue is actually reducing because half your customers are going away for no fault of your own. And you're busier than ever because there's such demand in the market. It isn't busy in terms of the actual time you have to put in to achieve stuff, but you're not actually making any more money out of it. So I can understand that it can create some difficult situations, the current market.
I do agree with you. And of course, we always say, there's good and bad in every sector. This is not vilifying estate agents, letting agents, not at all, because I work with a really good letting agent who does his job extremely well and got a really good relationship. But what I would say just about your previous point as well is, okay, if that's the situation, the company that wins is the one that's going to deal with that the quickest and the best. And from my point of view, if you put the customer front and center, and again, this is where I agree there is a complication because you've got two customers, you've got both the buyer and the seller. But if you're in a situation where you're getting hundreds of calls for properties, then you have to work out, you have to solve that problem. How do we manage that? Because there's got to be a point after, let's say, 20 that the rest just aren't needed. So how do we just close that down? And you just have windows of time and you say, okay, and then you just have a process to say for those people that are now calling, really sorry if you're calling for property X and Y. These are not, do you know what I mean? It's just thinking about how we manage that, because actually it's detrimental to your potential customers, but it's detrimental to you as a business because you're now fielding calls which are leading nowhere. So again, all problems to solve, and that's their business to solve it.
Yeah, indeed. And speaking of managing time, we're a bit over time.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. We have come to an end of a podcast episode and hope that people are still enjoying the show. If you are, please do leave us a rating or review. It gets seen by us and we'd certainly give you a shout out on the show. So please do reach out to us also on Biz of Property at BIZ of Property on Twitter or thebusinessofproperty.com. Until next week.